The mother-in-law showed up the very next day after the wedding and stole all the money and gifts. As soon as I noticed they were gone, I immediately checked the cameras. And what I saw there, even the local officer was shocked. But before I tell you what happened, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Thank you, and enjoy the story. Varvara could barely stand when she and Maxim finally climbed the stairs to their apartment. The wedding had been amazing. About 80 guests came, and they danced until morning. Now the newlyweds were coming home with the first rays of the sun. Varvara's shoes had rubbed blisters on her feet, her white dress was wrinkled, and her hairstyle had long lost its shine. But she was happier than ever. At last home, Maxim sighed, pulling the keys from his jacket pocket. His hands trembled a little from tiredness and excitement. I still can't believe we're husband and wife, Varvara whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder with a smile. She had waited 32 years for this moment. And now it had finally come. Maxim turned out to be everything she had ever dreamed of. Reliable, caring, with a good job and serious intentions. They had met a year ago at the medical center where she worked as an administrator. He had come in for a checkup after a work injury. Max, let's not sleep just yet, Varvara suggested as he was putting the key into the lock. Let's open the gifts, count the money. I'm curious how much we got. Maxim suddenly froze, staring closely at the lock. His eyebrows drew together. What's wrong? Varvara asked. That's strange, looks like some new scratches, Maxim muttered as he turned the key. And here, look, a shoe mark near the door. Someone was standing here. Varvara bent down to check. He was right. On the light linoleum floor of the stair landing, there was a clear footprint. And it looked fresh. Maybe the neighbors dropped something and were looking for it, she suggested, though a little worry crept into her heart. Yeah, probably, Maxim agreed quickly. Or maybe the janitor was cleaning. He shook his head. Let's not think about that today. The door opened easily, just like always. Inside, everything seemed quiet and normal. Nothing looked out of place. Varvara slipped off her shoes and walked into the living room, where the wedding gifts were piled up on the table, boxes, envelopes, and bags tied with ribbons. Oh my God, there's so much, she gasped, her eyes wide with excitement. Let's start opening them. Maxim nodded and sat beside her on the couch. Together they began opening envelopes and counting the money carefully. Varvara wrote each amount down in her notebook so they could thank everyone personally later. Aunt Clava gave us 10,000, she announced, pulling bills out of a pink envelope. Very generous. My coworkers pitched in 15, Maxim added, holding up a thick white envelope. And from my boss, 20,000. An hour later, the table was covered with neat stacks of cash. Varvara totaled it up and even whistled in surprise. 147,000 rubles, Max. Can you believe it? We're rich. And that wasn't all. Guests had also given them plenty of useful things, golden earrings and a chain worth about 20,000, a crystal set from Varvara's colleagues, a high-end blender she had always dreamed of, luxurious silk bed sheets, and 2 sets of soft towels. A beautiful vase for flowers. We need to hide all of this properly, Maxim said, gathering the money into one box. 150,000 is a serious amount. Let's put it in the bedroom, on the top shelf of the closet. That's the safest place, Varvara agreed. They carefully packed all the gifts and money into a large cardboard box and carried it into the bedroom. Maxim placed it on the very top shelf, behind their winter clothes. Tomorrow we'll decide what to do with the money, he yawned. Maybe we'll put some in the bank and use the rest to remodel the kitchen? Great idea, Varvara smiled. But for now, let's get at least a little sleep. We both have work tomorrow. They lay down without even changing, right on top of the bedspread. Maxim wrapped his arm around his wife, and within minutes, he was already snoring softly. But Varvara lay awake, her thoughts spinning. Her life had changed completely. She was no longer a lonely woman, she was a wife now. She had a husband who would protect her and stand by her side. Together they would build a family. Maybe one day, even children. She finally drifted off, only to be woken by the sound of the doorbell ringing insistently. Maxim was still fast asleep beside her, not moving a muscle. Varvara looked at the clock. 1:30 in the afternoon. The bell rang again, longer and more demanding this time. "Max, someone's here," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. "What? Who?" he mumbled, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "What time is it?" "It's already afternoon. Probably the neighbors coming to congratulate us," he muttered as he reluctantly got out of bed and shuffled toward the door. Varvara quickly brushed her hair and straightened her wrinkled dress. From the hallway, she suddenly heard Maxim's surprised voice. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "I told you we're resting today after the wedding." Varvara froze. It was his mother, Nina Grigorievna. But they had agreed that Varvara would meet her husband's parents only a week later, after the newlyweds had some rest and got themselves in order. "Son, I just couldn't wait any longer," came a cheerful female voice. "I wanted so badly to meet your wife. And besides, I brought you some gifts and food." Varvara stepped into the hallway and saw a plump woman in a bright orange coat. Nina Grigorievna was short, wore heavy-framed glasses, and had her hair styled in tight curls. In her hands, she carried a huge shopping bag stuffed to the brim. "There's my new daughter," the mother-in-law exclaimed with a wide smile. "Varya, my dear, I'm so happy to see you." She rushed to hug Varvara so tightly that the young bride almost lost her balance. A cloud of cheap sweet perfume mixed with something unpleasant lingered around her. "Hello, Nina Grigorievna," Varvara answered politely. "Please come in." "Mom, maybe you could come another time?" Maxim asked carefully. "We're really tired and wanted to catch up on sleep." "What are you saying?" Nina snapped, offended. "I traveled an hour and a half by bus, dragging all these bags. You mean you won't even let an old woman in for a cup of tea?" Varvara nudged her husband gently with her elbow. It didn't feel right to turn his mother away the very first day after the wedding. "Of course, come in," she said quickly. "I'll put on the kettle." "That's better," Nina beamed. "I even baked you some potato pies this morning." She carried her bag into the living room, looking around carefully, her eyes scanning the furniture, the appliances, and the pictures on the walls. "What a beautiful apartment," she said with admiration. "2 rooms, right? And is the kitchen big? Can I take a look?" "Of course," Varvara replied politely, though she found Nina's interest in the layout a little strange. The mother-in-law carefully walked through the whole apartment, peeking into every single room. In the bedroom, she lingered the longest, examining the closet and the dresser. "Where's your bathroom? Do you have a balcony? And which way do the windows face?" The questions just kept coming. Varvara patiently showed her everything, though she couldn't help thinking, are all mothers-in-law this curious? Over tea, Nina Grigorievna asked endless questions about the wedding, the gifts, and the couple's future plans. Varvara answered openly, while Maxim spoke little, giving short replies. "You must have gotten a lot of gifts?" the mother-in-law asked. "Some money, some jewelry, the usual for a wedding," Varvara said carefully. "Can I see them? I just love beautiful things. And I'd like to know what people give as wedding presents these days." Maxim shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, why do you need to see that?" "Oh, come on, son," she said sweetly. "Just curious. I'm part of the family now, aren't I?" Varvara didn't see much harm in the request. After all, this was her husband's mother, almost like her own now. "All right, I'll show you," she agreed. They went into the bedroom, and Maxim reluctantly brought out the box with the gifts. Nina Grigorievna began inspecting each item like a true collector. "Oh, what beautiful earrings! Gold with little stones. And this chain, such fine work. And this blender, I saw one like in the store, costs at least 7,000. She even pulled out her phone and started taking photos of the gifts she liked the most. "What are you doing?" Varvara asked, surprised. "Oh, nothing," Nina said with a laugh. "Just for memory, to show my friends later how beautiful my son's wedding was." "You don't mind, do you?" Varvara shrugged. It was strange, yes, but not terrible. The mother-in-law stayed for almost 3 hours. The whole time, she kept asking questions, studying the apartment, and praising the young couple. Finally, as she was about to leave, she said, Varvara, dear, may I freshen up in your bathroom before the trip home? Of course, Varvara replied. Nina went into the bathroom and stayed there surprisingly long, about 15 minutes. Finally, Nina came out of the bathroom, said goodbye, and left the apartment with her enormous bag. Thank God, Maxim sighed the moment the door closed behind her. I thought she'd never leave. She's not so bad, Varvara said thoughtfully. Just very talkative. Too talkative. And a little too curious. She went to the kitchen to clear away the teacups. Then she remembered she hadn't fixed her makeup since morning and decided to tidy up her cosmetic bag. When she opened it, she froze. Between her mascara and lipstick lay a small key. A shiny, brand new key that definitely hadn't been there before. Maxim, she called. Come here. What is it? He asked, walking over. Look what I found in my makeup bag. Where did this key come from? Maxim glanced at it, and his expression instantly changed. His face grew tense. He snatched the key and shoved it into his pocket. It's mine, he said quickly. For the garage. What garage? Varvara frowned. You don't have a garage. I do. Well, I rented one recently. I wanted it to be a surprise for you. Then why was the key in my makeup bag? Must have been a mistake. I probably mixed it up with something, he muttered, avoiding her eyes. His hands fidgeted with the key inside his pocket. Maxim, are you hiding something from me? What? Don't be ridiculous, he answered too loudly. I'm just tired. My head's not working right. But Varvara couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling. The scratches on the lock that morning. The strange footprint by the door. The mother-in-law who had taken pictures of all the gifts and inspected every corner of the apartment. And now this mysterious key. Maybe we should check if the gifts are all still there, she suggested carefully. Why? Maxim replied quickly. We just packed them away yesterday. Just for peace of mind, she said. Varvara started toward the bedroom, but Maxim stepped in front of her, blocking the way. Varvara, don't. Everything's fine. Let's just have dinner and go to bed early. Tomorrow's a work day. Maxim, what's going on with you? Why don't you want me to check? I do. Just not now. I'm really tired. Varvara studied her husband's face. She saw something in his eyes, something that looked like fear. And that scared her even more. All right, she said softly. We'll check tomorrow. But inside, she had already decided. She would check. And soon. Because something was wrong. Very wrong. The rest of the evening passed in strained silence. Maxim kept glancing nervously at his wife, and Varvara pretended not to notice. They went to bed early, but Varvara lay awake for a long time, her eyes open, replaying the day in her mind. The mother-in-law had shown up the very next day after the wedding. That was strange enough on its own. Then came all her questions, the photos she took of the gifts, the way she studied every corner of the apartment, and most of all, that mysterious key in Varvara's makeup bag. And Maxim's strange behavior. Tomorrow I'll get to the bottom of this, Varvara promised herself as she finally drifted off. She had no idea the shock waiting for her the next day would change her life completely. The next morning, she woke to the annoying sound of the alarm clock. 7 o'clock, time to get ready for work. Maxim was still snoring beside her, his arms spread out carelessly. After everything that had happened yesterday with his mother and the strange key, Varvara's sleep had been restless. She kept waking up with a feeling of unease. Max, get up. She shook his shoulder gently. It's time for work. 5 more minutes, he mumbled without opening his eyes. No, get up. And by the way, I want to check our wedding gifts before we leave. Maxim's eyes snapped open. He sat up in bed immediately. Why? He asked too quickly. Just to make sure everything's fine. After your mom's visit yesterday, I can't shake this uneasy feeling. Varvara, what are you talking about? My mom would never take anything. She's my mother. But Varvara was already walking to the closet. She climbed onto a chair and reached for the top shelf where they had hidden the box of gifts. Her hand touched nothing. Maxim, she cried. The box is gone. What do you mean gone? He jumped out of bed and rushed over. I mean it's not here. Look for yourself. Maxim climbed onto the chair and searched the entire top shelf. Nothing. The box had vanished. Maybe we put it somewhere else, he suggested, his voice trembling. Somewhere else? We both put it right here yesterday. They began tearing through the apartment in a panic, checking under the bed, pulling open every closet, searching the dresser. In the kitchen, they opened every drawer and even the storage space above the cabinets. In the bathroom, they dug through the laundry basket. But the box with the gifts was nowhere to be found. This is impossible, Varvara repeated, running from room to room. 150,000 rubles don't just disappear. Plus the gold, the jewelry, the appliances, all gone. Maybe thieves broke in? Maxim suggested weakly.
How?
The door was locked, the windows too. And why would they take only the gifts and money but leave the TV, the computer, the microwave? Varvara stopped in the middle of the living room, thinking hard. The scratches on the lock from yesterday, the dirt by the door, the mother-in-law's strange curiosity, the mysterious key in her makeup bag. Maxim, she said slowly. What if it was your mother? Maxim's face went white. What are you saying? My mom would never steal. Then explain the key in my bag. Explain why she was studying the apartment so carefully and taking pictures of our gifts. I don't know, but my mom has nothing to do with this. Varvara sighed and went to the bedroom. She opened the dresser to grab her purse for some bus money. When she unzipped the main pocket, she froze. Lying between her wallet and notebook was a small clear bag filled with white powder. Maxim, she screamed. Come here now. He rushed in and saw the packet in her hands. His voice dropped to a whisper. What is that? That's exactly the question. And I know it wasn't in my bag before. I use this purse every single day. Varvara carefully held the packet between two fingers. The powder was fine, pure white, with no smell. Maxim, this looks like drugs. Someone is trying to frame me. Maxim clutched his head. Throw it away. Flush it down the toilet.
What? No.
This is evidence. Someone planted it on me on purpose. Varya, please just get rid of it. If the police find this, you'll go to jail. I'm not hiding anything. I'm calling the police right now. Maxim jumped forward and grabbed her wrist. No, don't call them. Think about the consequences. What consequences? We've been robbed, and now someone is setting me up. What else could be more serious than this? Please, Varya, let's figure it out ourselves first. No outsiders. I don't want trouble for the family. Varvara stared at him closely. There was more than fear in his eyes. There was real panic. Maxim, do you know something about this? Tell me the truth. I don't know anything, he insisted. I just don't want our family dragged into a scandal. Family? And what about family if I end up in jail for something I didn't even do? Varvara pulled away from her husband and began pacing the room, deep in thought. Too many coincidences. The mother-in-law's visit, the missing wedding gifts, the bag of powder planted in her purse. Someone had planned this very carefully. You know what? She finally said. The moment I realized the gifts were gone, I checked the cameras. Maxim nearly jumped. What cameras? Hidden security cameras, she replied. I installed them 6 months ago, after our neighbor's fur coat was stolen. You just never knew about it. You never told me, Maxim muttered. Why would I? It's just a safety measure. The cameras record everything that happens when we're not home. Maxim turned pale as chalk. Varya, maybe don't check. Why stir up the past? What do you mean don't? We lost 150,000 rubles. Of course I'll check. She marched into the living room and switched on the computer. Maxim followed close behind, nervously rubbing his hands. Varya, think, what if the recording shows something bad? What if it's someone we know? Then all the more reason to watch, she said coldly. We'll find the thief and hand it straight to the police. Or maybe we should talk to the family first, he whispered. What family? I only have an old aunt, and from your side there's just your mother, who, let's be honest, looks like the thief. Varya? What, Varya? The facts are right in front of us. The computer finally booted up. Varvara opened the surveillance program. The menu showed the dates of recordings. "Let's check last night," she said, clicking the file. Maxim stood behind her, breathing heavily. Varvara could feel the tension coming from him, but she ignored it. She needed the truth. The video began. Yesterday evening. The living room came into view, showing Varvara, Maxim, and his mother sitting together, drinking tea. She fast-forwarded to the point when they all went to bed.
See?
10 p.m. We go to sleep. The apartment is empty. The time sped forward. 11 p.m. midnight. The place stayed dark and quiet. And then, at 2:20 in the morning, something moved on the screen. A faint light from a flashlight flickered in the living room. "Wait," Varvara shouted, pausing the video. "Look, someone's in the apartment." Maxim stayed silent, only swallowing nervously. Varvara set the playback to normal speed. On the screen, a figure in dark clothes appeared, moving carefully with a flashlight in hand, trying not to make any noise. "It can't be," Varvara whispered. The figure stepped closer to the camera, and the face became clear. "It's Nina Grigorievna," Varvara gasped. "Maxim, it's your mother." Maxim stared at the screen with empty eyes, saying nothing. The recording showed his mother moving through the apartment, searching every corner with a flashlight. First, she opened cupboards in the kitchen. Then, she went to the living room, checking the furniture. Finally, she walked toward the bedroom. Varvara quickly switched the camera view to the bedroom. There she was, Maxim's mother, creeping closer to the bed where the newlyweds were sleeping. She shone the flashlight directly on them, making sure they were deeply asleep. Then she turned toward the wardrobe. "She knew exactly where to look," Varvara said angrily. "She knew where we hid the gifts." The video showed her climbing onto a chair, reaching the top shelf, and pulling down a box. She lowered it carefully, placed it on the floor, and started transferring everything into her giant shopping bag. Money, jewelry, electronics, everything disappeared into the bag. Varvara clenched her fists. That old thief. But then, the worst part came. After stuffing the bag, Nina Grigorievna pulled a small packet out of her pocket and headed back to the living room. She picked up Varvara's purse from the sofa and carefully slipped the packet inside. "She planted powder in my bag," Varvara cried out. "She wanted to frame me." At last Maxim found his voice. "Varya, I can explain." "Explain?" Varvara snapped. "Explain what? That your mother is a thief and a snake? She asked me for a spare key, remember? For emergencies. And by emergency, she meant robbing us on the very first night after our wedding. I thought she just wanted to help if something happened," Maxim whispered, his face pale. "Help. She stole all our money and planted drugs in my bag." Varvara shut the laptop and turned to face her husband. Maxim stood with his head down, unable to meet her eyes. "Maxim, did you know about this?"
No.
"I swear I didn't know." "Then why didn't you want me to check the gifts? Why didn't you want me to watch the recording?" "I was just scared," he muttered. "Scared? Scared of what?" "Scared that maybe she could have done something like this." "So, you suspected her?" Maxim stayed silent. "Answer me," Varvara snapped. "Did you suspect your mother might rob us?" She's had money problems before. Sometimes she borrowed from neighbors and never paid them back. But I never thought she was capable of this." Varvara looked at her husband as if he were a stranger. He had known his mother was dishonest, yet he never warned her. Worse, he had actually given his mother a key to their apartment. "Maxim, do you even understand what just happened? Your mother stole our wedding money and tried to frame me with drugs. If it weren't for those cameras, I could be in prison right now. Varya, please forgive me. I didn't know. I never thought." "What did you think when you gave her the key?" she interrupted bitterly. "That she'd come over to bake cookies? She said she wanted to clean up sometimes while we were at work. To surprise us." "Well, she sure surprised us," Varvara hissed. "Some surprise." She began pacing the room, trying to calm down, but the fury inside her wasn't just for her mother-in-law, it was for Maxim. Nina Grigorievna was just another woman. But Maxim? He was her husband. He was supposed to protect her. And instead, he had betrayed her trust. You know what? Varvara said at last, her voice firm. I'm calling the police. Varya, wait.
No.
I won't wait. Your mother stole a huge amount of money and tried to plant drugs on me. That's a serious crime. But she's still my mother, Maxim whispered desperately. And that gives her the right to steal and ruin people's lives? Varvara shot back. Maxim moved around the room in panic, grabbing her hands. Please, let's just talk to her first. Maybe she'll return the money. Maybe she had some reason, some problem. What problem could ever justify stealing 150,000 rubles? I don't know, Maxim admitted. But let's at least find out. Varvara stopped and looked closely at her husband. In his eyes, she saw not shame or guilt, but anger at her and fear for his mother. He was ready to forgive his mom anything. Maxim, she said quietly, if you don't stand with me right now, if you defend a thief just because she's your mother, then we have nothing left to talk about. Varya, what do you mean? I mean, I've seen a new side of you, and I don't like what I see. Maxim dropped onto the couch, holding his head in his hands. Varya, come on. We just got married. Are you really ready to destroy our family over money? Not over money, she snapped, but over betrayal. Your betrayal and your mother's. What betrayal? I didn't do anything wrong. You gave a stranger the key to our home without telling me. You hid the fact that your mother has a history of cheating people. And now you're defending her instead of standing by your wife. Maxim stayed silent, realizing she was right. I need an answer from you, Varvara said firmly. Either we go to the police together and report your mother, or I go alone, and I'll also file for divorce. Varya, this is an ultimatum, Maxim. Choose justice or your mother. There's no third option. Maxim sat in silence for a long time, struggling with himself. Finally, he raised his head and looked at her. All right, he said softly. Call the police. Varvara nodded and picked up her phone. Before dialing, she studied her husband one more time. Her gut told her that this theft was only the tip of the iceberg. The real, most painful truths were still ahead. Police dispatch, how can I help you? A voice answered on the other end. Hello, Varvara said steadily. I'd like to report a theft. Outside, a new day had already begun. A day that would turn Varvara's whole life upside down and show her how little she truly knew about the people she trusted. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Varvara opened the door and saw a tall, thin man in uniform, and next to him, a young female investigator holding a folder of documents. My name is Senior Officer Sergei Ivanovich Borisov. The man introduced himself. And this is Investigator Anna Sergeyevna Fedorova. You reported a theft.
Yes.
Please come in, Varvara replied. Maxim sat pale and silent on the couch, looking crushed. Ever since they had decided to call the police, he hadn't said a word, only nodded or shook his head when Varvara asked him something. Tell us in detail what happened, Sergei said, pulling out a notebook. Varvara started from the beginning, her mother-in-law's visit 2 days earlier, how Nina Grigorievna had kept asking about the wedding gifts, taking pictures of them, and carefully looking around the apartment. Then she explained how, the next morning, all the valuables were gone, and how she found a small packet of white powder left behind. Do you still have the packet? The investigator asked. Yes, here it is. Varvara showed it, carefully wrapped in a napkin. I never touched it with my bare hands. That was the right thing to do, Anna nodded. Now the most important question. Do you have any proof that your mother-in-law was the one who stole everything?
Yes.
I have security cameras in my apartment. Everything was recorded. The two officers exchanged a quick look. Can we see the footage now? Sergei asked. Of course. Varvara turned on the computer and played the video. They watched closely as Nina Grigorievna entered the apartment at night, stole the gifts, and planted the suspicious packet. Wait, stop right there, Sergei suddenly said when her face appeared on the screen. Play that part again. Varvara rewound the video. Sergei leaned closer, staring at the image for several seconds. It can't be, he muttered. Anna, look at this. I think it's her. The investigator studied the screen carefully, then nodded firmly.
Yes.
That's definitely her. Nina Grigorievna Malasheva, born. Who is she? Varvara asked, confused. Sergei pulled out his phone and opened a file from the police database. He showed Varvara an old photograph. The younger face was clearly the same woman. She's a wanted criminal, he said gravely. We've been searching for her for 3 years, Sergei said. She specializes in real estate fraud against elderly people. Varvara gasped. Fraud? What do you mean? The investigator explained calmly. It's simple. She wins the trust of lonely old people, usually by becoming their caregiver or housemaid. Then she convinces them to sign their apartments over to her or her partners. After that, the elderly victims are either thrown out of their homes, or sometimes they just disappear under mysterious circumstances. Varvara shivered. That's exactly what I saw on the recording. It was unbelievable. There are 7 confirmed cases in her file, Sergei continued. The total damage is over 2 million rubles. And there are also 3 suspicious disappearances of elderly people, though we don't yet have enough proof to tie them directly to her. Maxim sat silently, his head buried in his hands. Young man, the investigator turned to him, are you telling us you didn't know about your mother's criminal past? Maxim lifted his head. Varvara expected shock or denial, but instead she saw fear in his eyes. Maxim, she said slowly. You knew? He didn't answer. Answer me. Did you know your mother is a criminal? Yes, he whispered so softly it was almost inaudible. Varvara felt the floor slip from under her feet. All this time, she had been living with a man who hid the truth about his family. When exactly did you find out about her crimes? Sergei asked. From the very beginning, Maxim admitted. I helped her hide.
How?
Sergei pressed. I rented apartments under my name for her. I bought her phones. I passed along money. Sometimes, I even helped her find victims. The investigator scribbled notes in her pad. So, you admit you were an accomplice? Maxim gave a small nod. Varvara stared at her husband, as if he were a stranger. For 1.5 years she had dated him, trusted him, loved him, only to end up marrying a man who had been helping a dangerous con artist all along. Now explain, the investigator said firmly. How did your mother get access to this apartment? I gave her a key, Maxim admitted. Why? She said she wanted to check the layout for future operations. Varvara felt dizzy. Future operations? You mean you were planning to use my apartment for fraud? Maxim stayed silent, but his silence spoke louder than words. Young man, the officer said sternly. Tell us everything, or things will get worse for you. Maxim sighed deeply and finally began. My mother had been watching Varvara for a long time. She found out Varvara owned her own apartment, had no close relatives, and a steady job. Perfect conditions for her new plan. Perfect for what? Varvara whispered. For long-term fraud, Maxim said. The plan was complicated and had several stages. First, I was supposed to marry you. We'd live happily for a few months, so I could win your complete trust. Then my mother would plant illegal substances in your home and call the police. You'd be arrested and jailed. I'd be left behind, officially an innocent widower with a free apartment. After some time, we could sell the apartment and use the money to fund new scams. Varvara's whole body went cold. Their meeting, their romance, the proposal, even the wedding, it had all been part of a carefully prepared criminal scheme. But that wasn't the end, Maxim continued, as if he had decided to spill every truth at once. After selling your apartment, the plan was to set up a fake construction company. We'd collect money from elderly people, promising to build a retirement home. Then we'd disappear with the money. How much money are we talking about? The investigator asked. My mother said between 15 and 20 million rubles. There are plenty of lonely retirees in this city with savings. Varvara gripped the back of her chair to keep from collapsing. 20 million rubles. And all of it built on her suffering, on destroying her life. So tell me, she asked in a trembling voice, did you ever really love me? At first, no, Maxim answered honestly. It all started as just a job, an assignment for my mother, Maxim said quietly. But later, I really did grow attached to you. When it was time to carry out the first stage of the plan, I realized I couldn't do it. That's why I got so nervous when you wanted to check the wedding gifts. So that's it, Varvara whispered.
Yes.
I was hoping my mother would change her mind, that she'd just take the money and gifts, and we'd find another way to make money. But she refused. She was determined. Why start with stealing the wedding money? The officer asked. It was a test, Maxim explained. Mother wanted to see how Varvara would react under stress. Would she go to the police? Would she trust me? Would she believe I was innocent? Based on her reaction, the rest of the plan would be adjusted. So the theft wasn't the goal, it was just a way to study the victim, the investigator clarified.
Exactly.
And besides, extra money never hurts. 150,000 rubles is a good amount to cover the first expenses for a new scam. The investigator carefully wrote down every word. Then she looked up at Maxim. Tell me, do you have any messages between you and your mother about this plan? Maxim's face turned pale. Hand over your phone, the officer demanded. Reluctantly, Maxim pulled out his phone and gave it to the policeman. Sergei Ivanovich started scrolling through the messages. Let's see. Here's one with the contact name Mom. Reading. Maxik, when will you bring me the apartment plans? Dated August 20th. Varvara's heart sank. She remembered that day. It was just a week before their wedding. Next message, the officer continued. Tomorrow I'll bring them. Took pictures of all the rooms, even the ventilation and the electrical box. And here's her reply on the 21st. Good job, son. I studied the plans. Everything is clear. The key is ready. And your response. Made 3 duplicates as agreed. 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 spare. With every word, Varvara felt her world collapsing. Everything had been planned in detail, down to the smallest step. Every single day of their life together had been built on lies. Here's another one interesting, the officer said, scrolling further. From a month ago. Message from Mom. Maxik, does your wife suspect anything? Your reply. No, Mom. She completely trusts me. She even showed me where she keeps the apartment documents.
Varvara suddenly remembered that day.
Maxim had asked about her documents, pretending it was for life insurance. Trusting him completely, she showed him everything, even her will, which she had written in his favor before the wedding. There's more, the officer continued, reading aloud. Yesterday, Maxik, everything is ready. I took the money and planted the powder. Tomorrow call the police and play the role of a shocked husband. Remember, you know nothing. You're in shock. You'll do anything for your wife. Maxim's reply was shaky. Mom, I changed my mind. I can't do this to Varvara. She's a good person. His mother's answer was furious. What do you mean changed your mind? We've been preparing for 2 years, put in so much effort. Maxim, let's just take the money and disappear. We can start fresh in another city. His mother snapped back. What, did you fall in love with that simpleton? Everything is going strictly by plan. Don't listen to anyone and do as I say, or you'll go to jail yourself as my accomplice. Varvara felt her body grow cold and stiff. Even at the last moment, when Maxim seemed to want to protect her, his mother still insulted her and threatened him with prison. There's more, the officer said, scrolling further. Here's a message from 4 months ago. Mom, Varvara is asking about your past. She wants to get to know you better before the wedding. Her reply. Absolutely not. Make excuses by any means. After the wedding, the problem will solve itself. For now, invent some illness. Say, I'm in the hospital. The investigator took the phone next. Here's one from 6 months ago. Son, I've chosen the final target. She works at a medical center as an administrator. Owns a 2-room apartment in a good neighborhood. Almost no close relatives, just a distant aunt in another city. Her name is Varvara Mikhailovna, 31 years old. Photos and address attached. Start working on her. The officer looked up. Are there photos? Yes, the investigator said grimly. A whole series. Pictures of the victim, taken secretly, outside her home, at work, in shops. Varvara's stomach twisted as she stared at the screen. Dozens of photos of herself, taken months ago, proving they had been watching her for a long time, studying her habits, her routes, her whole way of life. "Maxim," she whispered, her voice shaking, "so when you came to the medical center that day, it wasn't by accident?" "No," Maxim admitted, eyes fixed on the floor. "Mother gave me the entire plan. Which days you worked, what time you arrived and left, what your personality was like, what you liked. Even my accident at the factory was fake. She knew you were compassionate and would immediately feel sorry for a man who seemed injured." He took a deep breath before adding, "And all our dates, restaurants, theater, the trip to the sea, everything was paid for by my mother, using money from her previous scams. She always said, it's not a waste to spend money on bait if the catch is worth it." Varvara leaned back on the couch, her whole body heavy. A year and a half of her life. Every moment she thought was love was nothing but a lie. All the dates, all the late-night talks, the plans for a future together, even their intimacy. Every single detail had been a carefully staged performance with only one goal: to steal her apartment and use her pain for new crimes. "We have more than enough evidence," the investigator told her firmly. "We've got video of the theft, physical proof, full transcripts of their messages, and a detailed confession from one of the accomplices. The case is solid." "What punishment are they facing?" Varvara asked quietly. "Your mother-in-law could get 10 to 12 years for everything we've uncovered. Possibly more if we prove her connection to the disappearances of those retirees. As for your husband, he's looking at 4 to 5 years if he cooperates fully. If not, he could get all 8. We already have proof that he helped organize at least 3 major scams." Varvara nodded slowly. Justice would be done. But at what cost? Her family, her dreams of a happy future, her trust in people, all shattered in a single moment. The investigator's tone shifted. "By the way, in your husband's phone we found something else, something very disturbing. A list of future victims. 23 names, with addresses and detailed notes about each one." Varvara's heart sank. "Are any of them people I know?" she asked in horror. "Unfortunately, yes," the investigator replied. "Your colleague, Svetlana Petrovna, the neighbor of your Aunt Galia from the 5th floor, even your distant aunt from Saratov. It looks like they plan to use your connections to gain trust and reach new victims." Varvara grabbed her head with both hands. So even her loved ones had been at risk. Thank God the scheme was uncovered now, before it went any further. "We need to arrest your mother-in-law immediately," the officer said. "Do you know her exact address?" Maxim, pale and defeated, gave them the address, even describing the entrance and the code to the building's intercom. "And she has a dacha in the village of Sosnovka," he added quietly. "That's where she keeps documents and valuables from her past crimes." Maxim gave them the address of the dacha too. "Good," said the investigator. "We'll arrange simultaneous searches. And you, young man, will need to come with us. You'll be identifying evidence." The police were getting ready to leave, but the investigator paused and turned to Varvara. "Varvara Mikhailovna," she said gently, "you will have the chance to file a civil lawsuit for moral damages. Given the special circumstances of this case and the scale of the planned crimes, the court will almost certainly support you. You can expect serious compensation." "And what if they don't have any money?" Varvara asked. "They do," the investigator explained. "At the dacha and in several safety deposit boxes they've hidden about 3 million rubles, plus valuables. All of that will be seized and used to compensate victims." "Thank you," Varvara said firmly. "I will definitely file the claim. And one more thing," the investigator added. "We'll need your testimony against the other members of the group." "Other members?" Varvara asked, shocked.
Yes.
This isn't just a family scheme. Besides the mother and son, there are several accomplices. A notary who prepared fake documents. A doctor who issued false death certificates. A realtor who helped sell stolen apartments. It's a whole network. Maxim finally lifted his head and looked at Varvara. "I'm ready to testify against all of them," he said. "I'll tell you everything I know. Just forgive me if you can." Varvara's eyes turned cold.
No, never.
"You didn't just lie to me. You were ready to destroy my life for money. I will never forgive you." But in the end, I couldn't go through with it, he whispered. In the end? Varvara snapped. And what about the year and a half before that? Every single day you were planning my pain. Planning how to trap me, how to make me suffer. Maxim said nothing. He knew there was no defense left. Let's go, the officer said firmly. We still have a lot of work ahead. They led Maxim away. Varvara was left alone in the apartment that had nearly been used as a tool for a crime. The next few days passed like a blur. The searches at Nina Grigorievna's apartment and dacha turned up shocking results. They found documents for 17 apartments that belonged to missing elderly people. There was money, jewelry, fake certificates, and photographs of potential victims. Varvara went several times to the investigation committee, giving statements and identifying evidence. Each time, she learned more details about the cruel plan that had been set against her. It turned out the plan was even more brutal than she had imagined. After her supposed arrest, Maxim was supposed to divorce her as a drug addict and take her apartment in court. A few months later, Varvara was supposed to die in prison under mysterious circumstances. Nina Grigorievna has connections in prison circles, the investigator explained. She has ordered the elimination of witnesses before. The same fate awaited you. When Varvara heard this, her knees went weak. She nearly fainted right in the investigator's office. Now do you understand why we take this case so seriously? Asked Anna Sergeyevna. You only survived because you had surveillance cameras? Varvara whispered. The case attracted huge attention in local and even federal media. The story of a mother and son marrying off a son to an unsuspecting girl just to steal her apartment and then try to kill her shocked the entire country. Journalists began reaching out to Varvara, offering interviews and asking her to write a book. She refused. She did not want to profit from her suffering or turn her tragedy into a show. Maxim did cooperate with the investigation. He told everything he knew about his mother's crimes and her accomplices. This helped uncover dozens of fraud cases and even find the remains of several missing elderly people. In the end, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He did not get a suspended sentence because of the extreme cruelty of the planned crime. Nina Grigorievna refused to admit guilt until the very end. She claimed she only wanted to teach the ungrateful, careless daughter-in-law a lesson, and that everything else was the investigator's invention. But there was too much evidence. Videos of the theft, messages, statements from her son, witnesses, documents, and money all proved her guilt. The court sentenced her to 14 years in prison. Her accomplices were also punished. The notary lost their license and got a 3-year suspended sentence. The doctor received 4 years in prison. The realtor got 5 years. Varvara filed a civil lawsuit for emotional damage against all the members of the group. The court ordered them to pay 1.5 million rubles together. Of course, the money couldn't make up for the betrayals, the broken dreams, or the life she had almost lost. But it gave Varvara a sense that justice had been done. The divorce went quickly and smoothly. Maxim sent his agreement from prison, gave up all claims to property, probably realizing he had already caused enough damage. A year passed. Varvara slowly returned to a normal life. Work helped her stop thinking about the past. Colleagues and friends supported her, tried to distract her. She changed all the locks, installed the latest security system, and got a German shepherd named Rex. Now she felt safe. During the year, several people asked her out: a colleague from a nearby department, a neighbor from upstairs, a doctor she knew from another clinic. Varvara politely refused everyone. She wasn't ready to trust anyone yet. Maybe someday I'll love again, she thought. But not soon, and she definitely wouldn't rush. She needed to really get to know someone and check them carefully before trusting them with her life. Sometimes in the evenings, Varvara would sit with a cup of tea and think about everything she had been through, about how close she had come to death. If it weren't for the precautionary cameras, she wouldn't be alive today. My instincts didn't fail me, she reflected. Something inside her had always told her that Maxim wasn't completely trustworthy. She regretted not listening to that voice sooner. One winter evening, Varvara was at home with a book. Rex slept at her feet. Snow fell outside. Quiet and calm. Then the phone rang. On the display appeared the number of Investigator Fedorova. "Good evening, Varvara Mikhailovna. I have news about your case." "I'm listening," Varvara replied. Nina Grigoryevna in the prison gave statements about several more crimes. It turns out, over her criminal career, she harmed at least 15 people. New evidence has been found. Her sentence will increase by 7 more years. "I see," said Varvara. "And your former husband, Maxim?" "He sends his regards from prison and asked me to tell you he is very sorry for everything that happened." "Thank you for letting me know," Varvara said. "Also, thanks to Maxim's testimony, we've uncovered an international network. Similar schemes using fake marriages exist not just in our region. There's a whole network in 7 cities across Russia. This case may now get federal attention." Varvara hung up and thought for a moment. Nina Grigoryevna got what she deserved, over 20 years in prison if she even gets out alive. Maxim also received a fair punishment. And Varvara? She had learned a lesson she would never forget. Never blindly trust anyone, even those closest to you. Always stay alert and listen to your instincts. She stroked Rex, who woke and rested his head on her lap. "You know what, buddy?" she said to the dog. "It's probably just better the two of us. No one will lie to us, betray us, or set us up. You're more honest than any human." Rex wagged his tail as if he agreed. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Varvara picked up her book and continued reading. Life went on. A different life, without illusions or rose-colored glasses, but honest. She was no longer the naive woman who, a year and a half ago, trusted a handsome man with sad eyes. Now she knew her own worth and would never let anyone deceive her again. 2 years after the trial, Varvara received a letter from her lawyer. It turned out that during a search of another secret apartment, the police found extra valuables worth about 1 million rubles. All the victims would receive additional compensation. Varvara gave up her share so the families of the affected elderly people could get more. She had enough money herself, but she knew those people needed it more. Slowly, the pain faded. What remained was bitter, but valuable experience. Varvara learned how to live alone without feeling lonely. She had an interesting job, loyal friends, and her beloved dog. Sometimes colleagues or acquaintances would ask if she regretted the divorce or wanted to marry again. Varvara answered honestly, not yet. Maybe someday she would meet someone she could truly trust, but only after careful checking. Maybe it's for the best, she sometimes thought. Better to know the truth about someone before marriage than to live a lifetime in lies. In the 3 years after her divorce, she was proposed to 4 times. A teacher from a nearby school, a doctor from their clinic, a programmer from a company. Even Investigator Fedorova hinted at a single colleague. But Varvara was in no rush. She now knew how easily people could deceive and how skillfully they could pretend. She studied every potential suitor for months, checking with acquaintances and watching them in different situations. Paranoid, her friends would laugh. But Varvara didn't mind. Better paranoid and alive than trusting and dead. One evening, 4 years after those terrifying events, Varvara was at home reading a detective novel. On TV, a program about solved crimes came on. Suddenly, she heard some familiar names. Today, our program is about one of the most cunning scams of recent years. Nina Grigoryevna Malasheva and her son Maxim created a criminal group that specialized in fake marriages and then eliminated their victims. Varvara switched the channel. She didn't want to think about the past. Life goes on and you have to keep moving forward. Rex came over and rested his head on her lap. The smart dog seemed to sense his owner's mood. "It's okay, boy," Varvara said, stroking him. "It's all over now." In the following years, Varvara built a successful career. She became a senior administrator, then deputy chief doctor for administrative affairs. She bought a car, renovated her apartment, and even went on a vacation to Europe. Life had settled down. Not the life she dreamed of in her youth, but honest and peaceful. Varvara realized that happiness didn't have to come from marriage. A person could live a full life without a husband. When she turned 38, her colleagues threw a big surprise party at a restaurant. Varvara was deeply touched. Over the years, she had become more than just a coworker. She was the heart of the team. "Varvara Mikhailovna," said the chief doctor during a toast, "you've shown us how to overcome life's hardships. You didn't break. You didn't become bitter. You became even stronger. We respect you very much." Varvara smiled. Yes, she really had become stronger. The ordeal that could have destroyed her had instead strengthened her. That evening, on her way home, she thought about the years she had lived, how drastically her life had changed in an instant, and the lesson life had taught her. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would live alone and actually be happy about it, I wouldn't have believed them, she thought. Now I understand. Being alone is better than being in bad company. At home, Rex greeted her, the loyal, faithful friend who would never betray or deceive her. Was that really misfortune? Varvara made dinner, fed Rex, and sat down at the computer to check her mail. Among the usual letters, one stood out with a strange sender address.
Varvara.
It's Maxim. I know I have no right to write to you, but I really want to apologize. In a month I'll be released. I promise I won't bother you again. He just wanted to say, you are the only bright spot in my life. I'm sorry, if you can forgive me. Varvara stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message without replying. The past must stay in the past, she thought. Maxim was released from prison and really never bothered her again. Sometimes she heard from mutual acquaintances that he worked as a loader in a warehouse, lived in a shared apartment, and wasn't seeing anyone. Everyone got what they deserved, she thought. A few more years passed. Varvara turned 42. She still lived alone, worked, traveled, and read books. Life was calm and steady. One day, a new cardiologist joined her clinic. His name was Andrei Petrovich. He was about 45, divorced, had an adult daughter, and was polite, educated, and had a good sense of humor. Her colleagues immediately started scheming. Varvara Mikhailovna, you need to meet him. You're both single and both worthy people. But Varvara didn't rush. She watched the new doctor for several months, observing how he worked, how he treated patients and colleagues, and how he handled stressful situations. Andrei Petrovich turned out to be a good, honest man. He didn't try to impress anyone, didn't flatter, didn't pretend. He just worked and lived a normal life. After 6 months, he invited Varvara for coffee, then to the theater, and then for walks in the park. Their relationship developed slowly and naturally. I know about your past, he said one day. Colleagues told me. I understand why you're cautious. I won't rush anything.
Thank you, Varvara said.
I need time to learn to trust again. We have time, Andrei Petrovich smiled. They dated for 2 years, slowly and carefully getting to know each other. Varvara met his daughter, and he met her friends. No one rushed anything. Andrei Petrovich was exactly as he seemed, honest, kind, and reliable. He didn't hide his past, didn't lie, and didn't play games. Maybe I'm ready to try again, Varvara thought. But only with him, and only if there was complete openness between them. On her 45th birthday, she got an unusual gift from Andrei. Not flowers or jewelry, but a folder full of documents. What's this? She asked, surprised. My full biography, he said. Criminal record certificates, references from previous jobs, medical reports, bank statements, everything you might want to know about me. Varvara was moved to tears. This man truly understood her fears and wanted to make sure she felt safe. Andrei, she said, what if I'm never ready to marry again? Then we'll live the way we are now, he replied. The main thing is that we are happy together. Varvara smiled. Maybe happiness comes when you stop desperately searching for it. They never had a wedding. Varvara wasn't ready for marriage, and Andrei understood. They simply lived together, supported each other, and made plans for the future. 5 more years passed. Varvara turned 50. Behind her were long years of loneliness, pain, and distrust. Ahead was a calm, steady life with someone she had finally learned to trust. You know, she said to Andrei one day, I'm grateful for that lesson life gave me. Yes, it was painful, but without that story, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have learned to value honesty and integrity. Everything in life has meaning, he agreed. Even the hardest trials make us stronger. Varvara nodded. She had faced betrayal, lies, even an attempt on her life, but she survived, didn't break, didn't become bitter, and stayed human. That was her greatest victory. Rex, now an old dog, lay at her feet, a loyal friend who had been with her through it all. Andre read the newspaper. The clock ticked quietly. Happiness, Varvara thought. It's not in princes on white horses or grand weddings. It's in simple things, in the honesty of the people you love, in a clear conscience, in feeling safe. Outside, the sun was setting. Another day in her new life was ending. A life without lies, without fear, without betrayal. A life she had chosen for herself. Years went by, and Varvara's life slowly grew calm and steady. She built a successful career, becoming a senior administrator and then deputy chief physician in charge of administrative work. She bought a car, renovated her apartment, and even traveled to Europe. Her life wasn't exactly the one she had dreamed of as a young woman, but it was honest, safe, and her own. She had learned something important. Happiness doesn't have to come from marriage. You can live a full, meaningful life on your own. She had loyal friends, a loving dog, a job she enjoyed, and a sense of security she had never known before. Varvara also learned the value of trust and caution. After what had happened with Maxim and his mother, she never took people at face value again. But she didn't let fear control her either. She took her time getting to know people, testing their honesty, and building real connections. And then, slowly, something changed. A kind, honest, and patient man named Andrei Petrovich came into her life. He had a daughter, a quiet strength, and a warmth that made her heart feel safe. He never rushed her, never pretended to be someone he wasn't. Over the years, they built a deep friendship, a bond based on trust, patience, and respect. On her 45th birthday, he gave her something extraordinary, a folder with every detail of his life, references, records, and proofs that he had nothing to hide. Varvara was touched to tears. Here was someone who understood her fear, respected her boundaries, and wanted her to feel safe. Over time, they grew closer, not through grand gestures or dramatic romance, but through simple, quiet moments. Coffee together, walks in the park, evenings sharing stories, supporting each other through work and life. There was love, yes, but it came gently, carefully, and honestly, the way it should. Varvara also found peace in herself. She no longer blamed the world for what had happened, though she remembered it vividly. She remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the danger, but she also remembered surviving. She had faced pain and deceit, yet she remained kind, compassionate, and human. That was her victory. Rex, her faithful dog, had grown old alongside her, a steady companion through every trial. Andre was a constant source of support and friendship. Together, they built a life of safety, honesty, and quiet happiness. Varvara often reflected on her journey. She realized that the darkest times had taught her the most valuable lessons: to trust her intuition, to value honesty above all, and to protect the people she loved. She understood that life was fragile, but also precious, and that true strength came not from avoiding danger, but from facing it and surviving. And so, in the soft glow of the evening, with Rex at her feet and Andre reading quietly nearby, Varvara felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. The storms of her past had passed, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. Happiness, she understood, was not about perfection or grand gestures. It was in safety, honesty, love, and the freedom to live life on her own terms. It was in the quiet certainty that she had survived, grown, and finally built a life that was entirely hers. And for the first time in many years, Varvara could truly smile, not because life was easy, but because she had lived, endured, and won. The sun set on another calm evening, and for Varvara, the future was no longer something to fear. It was hers to shape, with integrity, love, and the knowledge that she could survive anything.